Hello and welcome to a quick and dirty guide to Grim Batol, a Cataclysm dungeon returning for Season 1 Mythic Plus in the War Within. The goal of this guide is to go over the important mechanics and strategies for the trash and bosses in this dungeon so that you can succeed from day one. So let's get into it. At the start of the dungeon, you'll find the Twilight Earth Callers, who will cast Earth Bolt on random party members, and the Twilight Brutes, who will deal decent tank damage with Brutal Strike and will cast Obsidian Stomp, placing swirls under every player's feet. The Twilight Destroyer is the prio target, and will apply a moderate dot Twilight Flame on one target. This debuff also places a Void Zone at their feet every time it ticks, so try not to drop the puddles all over the party. They'll also frequently cast Umbral Wind, a large shadow damage nuke which knocks everyone back. Thankfully, this can be LOS'd by using one of the nearby walls or pillars. In this run, we pulled through the dragon into the last unique mob of this area, the Twilight Overseer and Lusted. You can also hold it for the first boss if you start with smaller pulls. The Overseer applies a heavy tank hit which increases damage taken, Ride, so packs with Overseers and many Brutes can be dangerous to tanks. The Overseers will also cast Reckless Tactics, enraging all nearby mobs, increasing their damage done, but also increasing their damage taken. Soothing this makes the pulls safer, but if you can live the increased damage, leaving the enrage can speed this area up. The Earth Callers also have a high priority kick on Mass Tremors, which does a large amount of unavoidable AoE damage if not kicked. Once you've cleared a few of these packs, you'll be able to mount these dragons and start a small gauntlet. Once you've mounted your dragon, you'll get a vehicle UI and two spells. The first is Engulfing Flames, which deals 10% max HP to any mobs hit, but you only have 5 charges. The other is Searing Ember, which only deals 2% max HP, but can be cast as many times as you want. You'll want to make sure you use Engulfing Flames when mobs are stacked up, or on the high HP/dangerous mobs such as Overseers and the Twilight Destroyers. The last pack before the first boss has 2 Overseers and can be very deadly to tanks, so I recommend sending at least 1, if not 2, Engulfing Flames at this pack. Once you've used all your flames, just try to do as much damage as possible with your second ability before landing back at the start. You'll now clear through the trash you just flew over, which includes the previous mobs, but should be quick and easy since most will be damaged. You can also see on the side here, there's a red dragon with a purple shadow effect. Be careful near these dragons, as walking too close will spawn an extra Twilight Destroyer. While the Destroyers can be good count and their main AoE is avoidable, you don't want to pull them if it's not intentional. General Umbriss is a pretty simple boss, but does require a lot of movement. He'll cast Commanding Roar, dealing a burst of AoE damage, and also summoning 3 Drakes, which will mark paths across 3/4 of the room. You'll need to find the space which doesn't have a Void Particle, as this will be the safe section. After the dragons fly by, the boss will cast Rock Spike, placing a circle around 3 players, which will deal AoE damage around them after a short delay, knock them up, and leave a permanent damaging zone behind. This will also summon another 3 Drakes, so you'll need to move into the safe zone again. Try to spread the earth zones around the room as you can, as you don't want to cover up the entire safe zone for one section if the fight goes for too long. He'll also cast Skull Splitter on the tank, dealing moderate damage and leaving a stacking bleed. Keep dodging as the fight progresses and you'll defeat the boss. Moving into the second boss's area, we'll find some new mobs. The Molten Giant will cast Molten Wake, dealing a burst of AoE damage and increasing everyone's fire damage taken for a short duration, making any follow-up mechanics more dangerous. Otherwise, he'll do Lava Fist, dealing moderate tank damage, though it is increased by the debuff. The Beguilers have a must-stop cast with Sear Mind, which stuns a target and deals massive ticking damage. You can kick the cast, or CC the channel if you miss the kick. Otherwise, they just try to cast Shadow Flame Bolt, doing moderate damage. The boss paths between the ends of this room, and when he reaches one side, he'll stop to do a forging animation, which spawns several swirls throughout the room. While the swirls are annoying, they mean the boss isn't moving. So if you don't see swirls, be careful as you don't want to pull the boss mid-patrol while you're clearing trash. The only other new mob in this area is the Twilight Flame Render, which has a large frontal, blazing Shadow Flame, which leaves behind zones of Shadow Flame and hits your tank with Shadow Flame Slash, dealing medium damage and leaving a dot behind. Pulling these two packs into the stair section makes it easier to group and also lets your party tuck into the stairs if the boss is patrolling nearby. You'll want to clear several packs before fighting the boss, as his mechanics cut off space and force you to move around the room. Forgemaster Throngus has 3 distinct phases based on which weapon he has, and will pulse heavy party damage as he forges them between phases. He'll start with his Fiery Axe, which lets him cast Fiery Cleave, a large frontal that will leave behind a cone of lava, cutting off space. Ideally, you'll want to bait this towards the inner lava pool or the exterior wall. Then he'll transition into his second phase, doing more pulsing damage as he forges his swords. With the swords, he'll cast Molten Flurry, dealing heavy tank damage and applying Molten Spark on 3 players over the course of the channel. This deals moderate damage over time, and when it expires, leaves a puddle of lava, so players debuffed will want to move behind the section you're taking the boss to not cut off space. Then, he'll pulse some more party damage as he forges his mace for his third phase. With the mace, the boss deals 1000% increased melee damage, so your tank will need to run out of range during the pulsing damage and kite him until this phase ends. While the boss moves, he'll leave a trail of lava behind, so the party should move ahead of him during this phase, and the tank should try to keep the trail near previous lava if possible. Once the phase times out, the cycle will repeat, each phase cutting off more space until the boss is dead. The trash after Throngus is some of the most dangerous in the dungeon. You'll find Flame Renders and Beguilers, as well as Twilight Lava Benders, who have a large frontal Shadow Lava Blast. They'll also cast Dark Eruption, cause an explosion of AoE damage around every party member, so you'll want to spread out. When the Lava Bender reaches 50% health, he'll cast Ascension, which does heavy damage in melee and moderate damage to everyone else. While ascended, the Lava Bender will constantly pulse damage, so focus them down quickly and be prepared with healer cooldowns or defensives. The Twilight Warlocks will cast Twilight Bolt, dealing moderate damage, but will also apply Enveloping Shadow Flame. This is a heavy dot which also absorbs a large amount of healing, making it very lethal, but it can be curse dispelled, so bring at least one if you can. The Twilight Enforcer deals ramping damage as their attack speed increases every hit, but this can be soothed to keep it manageable. Their size also increases as their stacks go up, so a big ogre means danger for the tank. The rest of the trash before the third boss is the same, but be careful with any packs that have multiple warlocks or if there is a lava bender, as together they can be hard to heal. The last pack before the third boss is a double lava bender pack, which are linked and can't be pulled solo. This can be very dangerous, and you should send cooldowns here to make it easier, as the first phase of the upcoming boss is easier than the second. You could also consider lusting this if it's up, or in really high keys, may skip them and just pull the boss, though this heavily cuts off the space you have to use for the boss mechanics. Drahga Shadowburner is a 2-phase encounter, and if you have lust, you'll want to send it on phase 2. In phase 1, the boss will cast Shadow Flame Bolt, dealing moderate damage. He'll also cast Invocation of Shadow Flame, spawning a large elemental which will fixate on one player. If the elemental reaches the player, it'll explode, dealing massive party damage, but it can be slowed, CC'd, and displaced, so kite it as you kill and cleave the boss to deal with it safely. The boss will also cast Curse of Entropy, mirroring the effect of the Warlock's Curse, dealing damage, absorbing healing, and slowing the targets, making curse dispels even more useful for this boss. Once you get Drahga to 0%, he'll run to the edge, do a short RP, and then return, now mounted on a dragon, Valiona. In this phase, the boss will continue to cast the curse, and summon the elementals, but the elementals will now spawn in sets of 2 rather than 1. The dragon will cast Twilight Buffet, dealing moderate damage and knocking players back while creating several tornadoes around the room. The dragon also has a frontal, Devouring Flame, which you can dodge. Phase 2 is certainly more hectic, but control the ads and manage the curses, and the boss will die when he reaches 50%. There are a few similar mobs after the third boss, and you'll eventually pull the mutated hatchlings. These mobs do decent tank damage, but on death apply a debuff increasing shadow damage taken, which stacks. As most mobs do shadow damage in this area, high stacks of this debuff quickly becomes lethal. Following the hallway down, you'll find Faceless Corruptors. These will cast Mind Piercer, creating several swirls which mind control you if you get hit, and will channel the heavily damaging spell Corrupt on one target. This hurts by itself, so be prepared with defenses, and be prepared for big defensives, externals, or health pots if you get targeted by Corrupt when you have the hatchling debuff. The final pack is a set of 2 Corruptors, which can be very dangerous, much like the double Lava Benders. But after defeating them, you can confront the final boss, Erudax. Erudax will start the fight with Void Surge, dealing heavy party damage and spawning several void tentacles across the room. Running into a tentacle will stun you and deal heavy damage, so be careful as you navigate the fight. He'll then cast Shadow Gale, which will create a large void circle that slowly closes in. You'll want to look for where the circle is converging, as that will be the safe spot once it's finished moving. Once the shadows have closed, the boss will cast Abyssal Corruption, applying a dot on 3 players, which pulses damage around them. It's a tight fit, but you'll want to spread out in the safe zone so no one is taking more than 1 zone's worth of damage, though the tank can live more if needed. Erudax will also cast Crush periodically through the fight, which is a heavy tank buster that also knocks back the target, so tanks need to be careful where their back is facing. After the safe zone fades, the boss will cast Void Infusion, spawning several of the mutated hatchlings from earlier in the dungeon. You do not want to kill these too fast, as they'll apply the stacking debuff, which makes the upcoming Void Surge extremely lethal. Instead, you want to kill them just after the Void Surge, so that the party has the debuff while the storm closes in, and it falls off before the corruption cast. The timing is extremely tight as of now, and I do expect it to change, but for now, try your best. The cycle repeats until the boss dies, or not. But either way, thank you for watching another dungeon guide, and I hope you found it helpful. I've linked the Dungeon Week Aura pack I'm using in these clips in the description below if you're interested, and please like and share the video. Also, if you haven't yet, please subscribe for more dungeon guides and content.